Hello, I'm Bob Penafeather for another show, Talking with Bob. And today we're with one of the favorite topics is our motor vehicle department, the manager, overall manager, Shereen. Supervisor. Yep. I degraded her already. I haven't even started the show. But there's a supervisor, Shereen Androsko. And how long you been there, Shereen?
Well, I will be with the county total about 15 years, and it will be about 12 years total with the DMV.
Well, let me tell you something. A few weeks ago, we did a show with, I believe it'd be your boss,
Yes.
the county clerk,
Yes.
which was Sue Dwyer. And I started telling her that my experience in the last couple of visits at the DMV was nothing short of exceptional.
Well, thank
Just
you.
ease,
Thanks.
walking in. The only hang up is security. I mean, you got guys like Tommy Giltner or whatever. I don't know why I got to take off my clothes and be searched, but that's another topic.
Oh, dear.
You know, with them guys. But
They don't do that.
no, but you know, and I can see why it's. I remember the days you used to go in and see bars up on the.
Yes.
You know, it looked like you were walking in to visit somebody in jail.
Yeah, it was almost like the Andy Griffith show.
Yes. So now with guys like the security team that you have, like this Giltner, I'm seeing you could take that all down because you feel so secure.
We still have the glass up.
Yeah.
We still have the glass up. It's good, but the bars, yes, are taken down.
You know, all joking aside, when you walk in, the system that's put
The Q-Matic
together,
system,
just
tickets.
Q-Matic, and it just, I mean, you get the ticket and you look at it, and say, I'm going to be here for an hour and a half, and you don't realize there's a system to it. Just that number doesn't mean you're going to be waiting for an hour and a half.
That's correct.
It depends what category you're looking to fit
Yes.
into or have to address while you're there. The people, your team,
Yes,
I've
are
had
a
different
good one.
ones. They've been very, very helpful.
they're outstanding.
Yeah, I had one last week. I was telling you the other day that she was, I mean, I had a registration on a vehicle, and all I can tell you it wasn't my wife's, and it was outdated by over a month. And she was very good about it, and I was in there, bing, bang, boom. I had new
Yeah.
registration and gone. And
See?
I go, this is amazing.
We try to definitely work with the customers. The
Yeah.
state has requirements, but the overall goal is to, provide very good customer service.
Yeah.
And help the visit to be a good one. The DMV is a need-based service. It's not necessarily a want service, so it's not someplace you always want to go. There's other things that you have going on. So we try to make the visit as pleasant as possible.
Well, I'll tell you something that really shocked me was, again, referring to Sue Dwyer's, the interview we were doing, or talk show, and
Yeah.
I say interview, not interview. And she pointed out that anything that people need, not only with a license or a registration, but any other questions, any other areas that need to be addressed,
Yes.
whether it's what's a good one? A senior citizen, taking care of my mother, father,
And their driving
and their
concern.
driving and everything. Call the DMV. They can direct you to that department to get the help that you're looking for,
Absolutely.
or that you don't even know that exists.
That is true.
And
That is
that's
true.
thinking way outside the box, because most people, they think DMV, license in the pocket, registration sticker on the window.
Very true.
And that's a very shallow view of what the capabilities are and the services you offer.
We can definitely direct customers where they need to go based on a subject that relates to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Might not necessarily be something that we specifically do,
Right.
but it definitely would give them a road to travel to get where they need to be to solve their problem.
And that is just, that's a very strong attribute
Yes.
that I'm sure 90% of the people or more don't even realize.
No,
Or
they
never
don't.
even think about, where do I go to get help?
Well, we get phone calls.
Yeah.
We get phone calls
Yeah.
on a daily basis, and after we answer their questions, sometimes they pertain specifically to the DMV, sometimes they don't. For the most part, at the end of the conversation, they will say, thank you. I really did not know that before I called, and
Right.
you were very informative. So a lot of times people hesitate to call the Department of Motor Vehicles, specifically, like you said, if it doesn't pertain to the registration or the license, it might
Right.
pertain to something maybe outside of that.
Right.
But also the wait. Sometimes they're afraid they're not going to get a person. And our office does answer the phone when we are able to. If we are inundated with customers, we have a lot of customers in our lobby.
Yeah.
Of course, we are unable to answer the phone. We have a voicemail and we return the phone call. So either way, whether they talk to us at that time or if we call back, we can provide direction.
How long does it take to call back? On an average.
Well, we call back on that day normally.
Okay.
So we
Just so
usually,
they know.
we have lulls of customers. So when
Yeah,
when
sure.
it quiets down, then the phone can be managed.
Yeah.
So we definitely try to call everybody back within that day. Yep.
Busy time of the day, busy time of the week, busy time of the month. It used to be the end of the month, first of the month. Don't go to the DMV. You'll be standing in line forever.
Yeah. Every day we're busy. I want to say Mondays and if you're looking on a weekly basis, Mondays and Fridays are pretty much the busiest. Days before a holiday, if our office is closed or after the holiday,
Yeah.
very busy. Very busy. Part of the month, I want to say it's consistent. It's very consistent throughout the month.
Yes.
Really isn't specific
no
beginning
big
or end.
highs or lows or whatever.
No, beginning of the week is usually a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing an exceptional job. I
Thank
mean,
you.
it's a great team, and my personal experience again, and I've seen different people there when I've gone over the last couple of months,
Good.
and they've been very polite. Maybe because they don't know who I am, so they didn't ask me to leave.
Well,
or-
see, it doesn't matter who you are. You don't have to be. It's just nice to be nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So hey, listen, it doesn't cost a dime
Exactly.
to be clean, polite, and pleasant.
Very
Doesn't
true.
cost a please and a thank you.
Very
Doesn't
true.
cost a dime. And that always gets me. And in the service industry today, how many times do you see a teenager say, "Well, thank you very much." You have to turn around and do a double take, because you're not used to that.
It's not hard to say thank you. It's not hard to say please.
No, and it
Yes.
means so much.
Yep.
So, another topic we had was addressing the senior citizens. This came up a couple of weeks ago. What do you do? And you and I touched on it the other
we
day.
did.
What do you do when it comes time to? I'm trying to address this because I don't want to put myself in that category, even though I'm pretty close to it. But as my kids say, "What are you going to do? We have to take your license away, Dad." I said, "You're going to need more than the whole family." But there's a process. It's not easy. I did it with my father, and it's probably one of the biggest arguments I had with him in my life.
I'm sure.
And so why don't you pick it up, because you're very informative on that side
Yes.
as well.
I try to be, and I try to keep up with it. The senior citizen per se they have a different thought process as to where they think they are driving when it comes to driving. They may feel they are a good driver, which that doesn't mean that they're not, but they may tend to drive a little bit slower, or they may take a little bit more time getting going on the road when they pull out from a driveway, or they may not go as far of a distance that they used to travel. They may not be very good driving on the highway with fast traffic. Their judgment might be slower, and they may not feel that that is a concern, because they just feel that we're just driving slower, taking my time, because I do understand that I'm not as good on the road as I used to be. And I'll use myself as an example. I'm not considered, I don't think, very old, but I'm older, and I see a difference in myself driving now than I did 20 years ago. On a highway, traveling to see my daughter, she's down in Long Island, I get very nervous. Highways make me very nervous. Where before it was
That's
so
not an easy drive anyhow.
No, it's not. And it's very true.
Yeah.
4-lane highways and people driving, 80 miles an hour. But I see myself having a difference in how I'm traveling, and I slow down and things like that. But some people may not think that that's a concern, when it could be. when you have traffic going fairly fast and you're slowing down because you know that your judgment's off.
Right.
So it is sometimes hard to put in perspective on your own that you possibly may have a concern driving.
Yeah.
And it's a form of independence. You love to get in your car, I'm sure, and drive all over the place and be able to go and visit your friends
Yeah.
and go shopping when you want to and not have to depend on anyone to do that. And when it comes time where you feel that your judgment might be off, or you're traveling too slow, not with the flow of traffic, or you might not be making good decisions in driving, when you put that in your mind that you should not be driving, you're taking away that independence of going to the store and doing all those things that you normally can do. And that hurts. And when you are unable to identify that yourself and you have to have someone tell you that,
Yeah.
that's hard. You said it was regarding your father.
Yeah.
He probably took it very bad. He was probably mad at you.
It wasn't. I've had a tendency to tip some people over now and then, but that was a day that I really tipped him over.
Yes.
This is, of course,
it's a tough subject.
He's gone now, God bless him. But he was going down Owasco Road, and I was behind him. He pulled out in front of me, not knowing it was me.
Okay.
And he was doing 15 miles an hour, backing
See.
up traffic, and and I just I think I addressed it the way probably most people would. I don't know, maybe I was a little bit more direct than most people would have been. I says, hey, it's time to give up the license, and it just set off a fireball from there. And one of the things he said to me was that I'm going to give him direction and give up the license with all the speeding tickets I got.
Yeah.
So then the one thing led
They
to
get
the other.
defensive.
Yeah, so anyhow.
Anybody would. It's normal. It's normal.
But so how do you get around it? What do you do with that? What's the alternative? What's a better way?
Well, there's a few different ways. I can use my mother as an example. The concern with my mother driving was a concern not just for me, but for my sister, our family. And my mom basically had rheumatoid arthritis. It was very hard for her to get around.
Yeah.
She tended to move slower, obviously. And when we discussed it, my sister and I, we said, now, if we go to Mom and we say, Mom, I think it's time for you not to drive, she's not going to listen because she was one of those individuals that felt like she was doing nothing wrong. So she was moving a little slower. She couldn't get around too well, but she could still drive the car. She could still push the gas. She could still get where she needed to go. Not thinking about maybe the hazard that could be involved with her possibly driving too slow or not having her reaction time to be as quick as it could if somebody was coming across the street. So my mother had a doctor's visit, and my sister, she is a nurse, she said, I wonder if, we could discuss this with the doctor. And I said, well, there is a form that is provided through the Department of Motor Vehicles that a physician could fill out in the area of a concerned driver. So what happens is the doctor fills it out maybe based on medication, or if a person is having episodes of dizziness or unconsciousness, things like that, they could basically submit this form to the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles in Albany. With that being said, then what they do is they request a driver review. And the person would get a letter in the mail. And the letter basically specifies whether or not they should come into the office and have an eye test. Maybe they would check their hearing in relationship to, what the concern was on the form. And it could result in a road test. They may make them take a road test. So sometimes you can refer it to the physician. And there's also, when there is an accident that involves an older driver, a police officer can submit a driver review form as well to Albany, which results in the same thing. The customer gets a letter, the driver gets a letter, basically specifying what the requirements are, what the concern is, and what they need to do. And if they don't do it, then that's where a suspension comes in on their license until they comply with whatever request it is.
How long does that take for that suspension to kick in? I mean, is it done within 60 days? Or is it done when they go to renew their license?
Well, normally they notify them. They give them 30 days to respond, and then they send them a letter and specify when the suspension will go on. So usually after 30 days of not complying, they get a letter, and it usually will say when their license will be suspended and for how long if they don't comply.
Does anybody else in the family get a copy of that?
No.
Or the doctor get a copy?
No, it's specifically to the
that
customer.
person?
Yes, and it's tough too because it's my mother. Using my mother as the example, when she got the letter, she said, I don't want to go through the driving test. I really don't think I could take a driving test.
Right.
She was 80 some odd years old.
Right.
I haven't taken a driver's test since I received my permit. I don't know if I could pass that test. So it was kind of embarrassing to my mom, which that wasn't the goal, but it made her think, okay, I might want to do this. And then when she discussed it with my sister and I, of course, my sister and I said, we could drive you where you need to go. Because that's the other concern. I don't have a license. What am I going to do? Some older drivers have people that they can count on to help them.
Yeah.
Some older drivers don't. And that's where you get into, the educating them more so on what public transportation is available and where they could go to get help. There's the Office of the Aging to help them with types of transportation. If it's possibly maybe not taking their license away, but maybe just taking a class, a refresher class. AAA, they can notify, contact their local AAA. They have a lot of programs that they could offer, for driving and practicing and refreshing. And there's also the New York Safety Council, which has education on classes, defensive driving courses, and things like that can help them, kind of learn about what driving. I'm trying to think of is sometimes when you drive for so long, you lose what the real law is or what the real rule is. We sometimes make our own rules. Right. So sometimes a refresher course can just remind you of some of the things that you might have not used or have forgotten about when you're driving. So it's not necessarily taking the license away. It could be some educational classes or just a refresher driving course that could help the person.
The review form, I've never heard of that.
Okay.
Never heard of it. And I think that's a great way of addressing pulling a license or addressing the issue.
It is. It's issue specific. Yes.
I mean, that's as I mentioned, I'm driving for First Student School Bus, and what you see is just, I'm even shocked. But I just sit there and I go.
Well, see, you've taken these classes, so you're more cognizant of some of these things
Well,
that
wait
people
a
aren't
minute.
paying attention
You didn't have to bring that up right now, but there is a reason why I took them classes. I'll point that out. But 2 weeks ago, I was on Letchworth Ave in Auburn with the school bus. I was in the middle of the road, so no car could go around.
Okay.
Lady come off of 2nd Ave. I had the reds on, students getting off the bus. She proceeds to drive in front of the bus, take a left-hand turn to come down the side. There's no place to go. I'm in the middle of the road.
Unbelievable.
And there was a school bus behind me with their lights on, and they blasted the horn.
So not seeing the
She
lights?
just, I don't know. I'm looking down the top of the car, so I can't get a plate number or whatever. But the lady did stop because obviously she couldn't get through.
So it wasn't the lights; it was the fact she couldn't get through.
She couldn't get through. She totally ignored all the lights.
She's probably wondering why you're sitting there.
The stop sign's out. They got the ambulance. I said, well, I don't know. You didn't see the yellow. You didn't see the lights flashing.
They didn't get
You
brighter.
didn't see the big stop sign sticking out in your face on the side.
That's what it is.
I just sit there. So when you mention this, I don't know if it was an older lady, but I don't know how old she was or whatever. But I says, first of all, my shallow response is, I got to keep it clean, but I'm sitting there going, what are we sitting here for? And she drives by us like we're
But these are some of the things that sometimes you lose your it's more or less like your concentration
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the lights and being in tune with what's going on around you. These are some things that you tend to lose after so long of driving, and just get in those bad habits, or you're thinking about something else, which can happen with anyone,
Oh, yeah,
basically.
Sure.
But yes, I mean, there's just some things that we just don't pay attention to that we just need to be reminded of.
Well, listen, if you surveyed everybody you knew or customers that come in, when was the last time they did a refresher course since they got their license at 16? And probably 99.9% says, no, I never, and you take somebody that's in their 60s and 70s and 80s, and you think, well, wait a minute, that's a lot of years,
It
and
is a
things
lot of
and things
years.
have changed. The laws have changed.
But they do offer those defensive driving courses, which can reduce your insurance.
Well, we talked about that.
And they also remove points
Well,
from your license.
Yeah.
But those are, if you're not taking those courses, you're correct. You're not getting any type of refresher. It's not something that people are picking up a book on a afternoon that's rainy out, and they're reading about how to improve by driving.
Right, no.
That is not something that normally people will read up on.
there has to be an incentive program.
Exactly.
And me personally, and you hit on it a few minutes ago, out of state. I was in Illinois. I did get a speeding ticket, and the cop says, hey, you go online, take this test, boop, 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 and it's only 2 hours, and and you won't get a mark on your license, and you get
boy.
discount on insurance.
Until they
and beep,
see your
beep.
grade.
And I
I'm
go,
just
all right, yeah, well, let me tell you, hold that thought, because
Now I don't have a license. No.
so I waited until the last minute. I says, all right, let me sit down and do this. When I was in my office years ago, or not years, about 7 years ago, and I went online and I started. Jesus, all right. So they ask you a bunch of questions,
Correct, right.
and it's a test, opening test. There, I got it, I passed it, and I'll go on. I failed.
I'm sorry.
I failed, and I sit there and go, how the hell's I fail this thing? And now
See?
I get
we
mad.
think we're all good drivers.
And I can't go on until
That is true.
now I got to take the rest of it, and it's done chapter by chapter, and give you a test at the end of each chapter.
And you
if,
thought it was just going to be bing, bang, boom.
well, it was all day long.
Oh.
And let me tell you what. But at the end of it all, once I walk away and I think back on this topic we're having, I haven't looked at a manual or driver's manual or anything like that since I was 16 years old. And in there
Yep.
was a lot of a tidbit information you don't think of that made you start to think.
See?
And I got through it. And at the end, I failed it again. But I only failed by one. You can only miss like 3 or 4 questions. So I
They
knew,
let you take it again?
and I knew. Well, no, I didn't. Just the last part. I didn't have to go back through the whole course. So then the second time, I'm not a good tester to begin with. Anyhow, I passed
We'll
it.
leave it at that. He's
So I
not a good
passed it.
tester.
But then I
It's
sit
nothing
there-
to do with the driving.
No, it's mine. And I got thinking, I says, it was very well done. And looking back at it, I says, every person that turns 60 to 62, give them a window of 2 years, 3 years, should have to go through that course
That's a good point.
before you review your license or renew your license, rather.
Because it made you more aware
It
of.
makes you more aware, and even to this day, there's things. There was a little thing in there, when we were taught when you're coming up, somebody's coming down the intersection and they're stopped. We're taught to look at the driver for reaction and what they're going to do.
Right.
With this one here, very small. Sometimes the smallest information gives you the big picture. You look at the front tire.
Yep.
If the front tire starts to roll, chances are
They're gonna go.
that person's going to make a move, and be prepared. So it's little things like that. School buses, again, I hate to keep saying it, but it is. I'm shocked at the lack of knowledge people have on a school bus. Going the other way, if it's even on a 4-lane highway, that person on the other side has to stop.
Yes. It is
And
it's a concern.
It's a big concern.
Very much
Look
so.
what happened in Norwich a couple of months ago the person went down the right side of the, how they ever got on the right side is amazing.
Right.
But the driver grabbed the kid before they went down the stairs. Or that person would have taken that,
Unbelievable.
that student would have taken her, and it was all on camera.
Just not paying attention to things like that that
No.
are so important.
And people don't realize inside those buses, 4 cameras, and it's all on film.
So they'll see them.
So they'll get them one way or the other.
That's a good thing.
And I asked
Pay
you the other
attention.
day, I says, what's the points for going by a stopped school bus with the Reds?
It's 5 points.
5 points in the total before you lose your license for 12 months is what, 11
It's
points?
11 points, and that's if you receive that many points within an 18-month period.
Within an 18-month period,
Yes.
if you get 11 points,
Yes.
accumulative,
Yes.
and going by one school bus with the
Is
Reds is
5.
5.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost 50%
Of your.
of you're used up already by
That is correct.
by one mistake.
That is correct.
And there again, I had asked you that question because with us, I think it was 8 points or 9 points,
Mm-hmm.
and it was within a 3-year period, years and years ago.
Yes.
So it's
They're very strict on those things, and they very much should be.
well, yeah. Well, not that, but
Absolutely.
it affects your insurance.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens. See, the drivers accumulate these points, and then they go and enroll in these defensive driving courses, which is great
Yeah.
because that's what you should do to be a better driver.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about it, they're doing it because they have too many points and they don't want to run the risk of losing their license.
Right.
But the outcome of taking that course is such as what you did.
Yeah.
You took the course, and when you ended the course or ended the class or finally passed the test,
I don't think you had to put finally in there, but that's
basically
It's true.
what it does is you walk away with information that you may not have known, one, or just needed a reminder of. And
Yeah.
it therefore allowed you to become a better driver.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's about, is being safe.
yeah.
And being on the roads safe. And it doesn't really matter how old you are. It's just the fact of being aware
Yeah.
of possible difficulties that you might be having, whether you're old or young. And if you are older, what you can do about it to help yourself be a better driver, or take that step and not drive, get a non-driver's ID, and have others drive you. There's so much public transportation available.
What's a non-driver's ID?
A non-driver's ID is just what that is. What it is you have an ID, identification for banking or whatnot, and it doesn't allow you the driving privilege.
But that's issued by the DMV?
It is. It is. So, and we do have people that come in. It doesn't necessarily have to be an older driver. It could be a younger driver that chooses not to drive or has
They
suspensions.
still need ID.
But they still need ID, so they surrender their driving privilege, and they get a non-driver's ID. Yeah, so they still are in the system. They still have the same number. They just don't have that driving privilege, but they have an ID that's necessary today.
Let me ask you this,
Sure.
that we didn't cover before, was the illegal immigrants getting a license.
Yes.
Do we get a lot of that here? Do you get faced with that?
We not really with illegal. Normally, when people come in who are from other countries and obtain a New York license, they bring in their citizenship.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So we
or
don't-
their temporary visitor
not a big issue.
information.
Not a big issue.
No.
It's a topic that is discussed
It is.
periodically.
It's discussed, and people talk about it based on the news and conversations that are going around. But normally, for your New York State license, you have to provide your citizenship or temporary visitor authorization, and everybody complies.
Okay. When it comes to time you give up your license, then the proper procedures go down to DMV,
Yes.
render your license.
You fill out a form. You
Then-
basically on the form specify that you
Okay.
are wanting a non-driver's ID.
Non-driver's ID.
Yep, and they turn in their license if they have it. Sometimes people don't have it; they've lost it, so they just have to fill out a form saying that they've lost the form, and that's why they're not
Right.
surrendering it. And they can get a new photo, and they get a temporary. It's a paper document, and then in 10 days, their photo document comes in the mail.
So all the attributes that go with a driver's license, they still have, but they can't drive a car. But
Right.
they still have all their ID
Yep.
and everything you need.
Absolutely.
When somebody says, I need a photo ID,
Yes.
you know.
That's
and,
it. And they only have to come in if they are a New York State driver and their license is not expired more than 2 years. They can basically come in and use that as their identification needed to get the non-driver's ID. So they don't have to reestablish that, you know,
Yeah.
bringing in a birth certificate, marriage
Yeah.
certificate, all of that.
What are some of the good, bad, and ugly things of the DMV that they have to deal with?
Our team?
Yep.
Wow, that's a loaded question.
I mean, some
I
of
don't
the
think
things
the
you sit
show
back and
is
go,
that
why?
long to go through all of that. Good, bad, or ugly? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good. Because I don't mean that in a negative
No,
way,
no,
and
no,
I'm not
no,
just
that's-
saying that
no.
because we're on TV.
Yeah.
There's bad, and there sometimes can be ugly, but a lot of it relates to what I have found with me being there the years that I have, is that the better you communicate what is necessary to get a registration, to register a car, a boat, a snowmobile, or to get a New York State driver's license, real ID, enhanced license. As long as we communicate the best that we can so that people understand what they need when they come to the DMV, usually everything's good. It's those times that people come in and they may not have everything they need, but one may not have asked or researched. You know, we do have a website. New York State has a website.
They just assume.
Cuba County has a website, which we, definitely would love people to use.
And what's that website?
It's specific, Cuba County. It's cugacounty.us.
CougarCounty.us.
Yep, is the county website. And it's very informative. It tells you about the forms. New York State has a website that gives out little checklists, what you need to bring in. So things can be really good if people have customers come in with all their information. When they don't come in with their information, Bob, we try to work with them on substitute information, such as, okay, someone doesn't have their insurance card. Could you call your insurance company and have them fax it to us? We have a fax. So therefore, you don't have to leave and come back. It's reducing a visit. We now take insurance cards on the phone. We can scan them right from their phone. So if they can't get a hold of their insurance company, they basically can have it on their phone. We scan it from there.
Sure,
All
yeah.
good. If they don't come in with their documents for a driver's license that they need to provide, such as proof of residency for this new real ID or enhanced, can you call your employer? Maybe they can fax over a W-2, or maybe you can fax over a pay stub. Or maybe you have something on your email, your Verizon bill. A lot of times you get your billing on the phone.
Yeah.
Can you email it to us? Because we have to scan those documents. So normally everything runs very well and fine with customers who want to do their research and ask. Two, if when they come in and they're missing something, we can work with them. And then we have the ugly, which we can't do any of that. And you have the customer who just is very frustrated, and they don't not necessarily want to listen, but when you're frustrated, it kind of hinders you listening.
Sure it does.
Kind of stops you from
Sure it
listening.
does.
So you only hear what you want to hear.
Right.
And then what happens is when they come back with the items that we explain they should bring, but their frustration kind of put a border up, so they only heard some of it.
Yeah.
They come in and they don't have everything. And then that gets ugly, because it could be something that, one, cannot be faxed, can't be emailed, can't
Right.
be on their phone, and it results in another visit. So a lot of times the ugly is based on frustration and people not listening at times. But for the most part, I want to say everybody's great. We have people that come in and they'll say, oh, I want to definitely use this DMV because I want it to stay here forever. Everybody's so good. And, Sue puts the tax flyers out in the tax
Yeah,
tax
yeah.
bills, letting people know,
Yeah.
use your local DMV, and they
Yeah.
come in because
Yeah.
they say, we want you to stay, and we want our county to have, the money, because if you send it to the state, we don't necessarily get any part of it. So
That's
we
right.
want people to mail them in
And Sue brought
visit
that up
us.
on the
Yes,
interview.
yeah.
It says 7%.
It's actually 12.7.
12.7%
of the transaction, the retention stays in Cuba County, which helps your local taxes. So use the office. It's great. And so therefore that's why we try to make it so easy on people. So we don't have all the bad and the ugly. We want all good.
Yeah.
Because we want people to come into the office and not use online. Because sometimes online's not easy either. We
No.
get phone calls.
No, it's
Constantly.
it can be very confusing. Again, especially to the elder
Yes.
part of our society, because they're
yes.
not, the younger ones like James here running this whole thing. I mean, to him, that's only common sense. Why would you do anything else but be online and going?
Yes.
Well, the elder person might have a computer, but they're not that savvy. They're
No.
not, and a lot of sites are not user friendly. So you
No.
get frustrated and walk away and say, "The hell with it,"
And we actually, when people will call and they say, we don't have that form, we get some seniors or older drivers that are snowbirds. They're in Florida.
Yeah.
And they don't use a computer. Well, how am I going to get a form if I have to renew my registration and I'm here and I'm not there? And, it gets all confusing, and then they get nervous and frustrated. We try to help with that. So we'll mail them the form. And then you can fill it out. We highlight where it has to be filled out, and they can mail it back,
send
and
it
we
back.
help them with that.
Yeah.
We try to make it very easy on people because it can be difficult. Speaking of difficulty with the forms, sometimes when you come into the DMV, or when people come into the DMV and they've never registered a car before, and let's use you as an example, you come in and you're handed this form, and it's inundated with words and questions, and we highlight where you have to fill out, but they don't necessarily know what to put in there or where to get the information to put in there. It's awful. It could make you feel so like you want to go home and fill it out and then just come back because it's just too much information.
Yeah.
So hence, that's why when we hand out forms, we try to explain to people too what has to be filled out, what they need, what they don't need, things like that, just to make it easier. So basically, to answer your question, there's a lot of good in the DMV. There is some bad and ugly based on,
It is
visits
anywhere.
with forms and,
Okay.
not having the information totally that they need. But we try to work with people because we try to turn the bad and the potential ugly around.
Into good.
Yeah, so that when they leave, they actually come back
They
and
say,
visit
okay,
us
this
again.
is. I guess the bottom line is, don't walk in with an attitude.
Which can be.
Walk in with our concerns of what have I got or what do I need,
Yes,
and listen, and you can help them out.
absolutely.
Your team can help them out, which can take out all the frustration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's nobody, like I said, the DMV doesn't, not our DMV, but DMV, countrywide doesn't have a good reputation. And we try to work on turning that around. And I feel that we've come a long way.
Oh, you certainly have
with
down
that,
here. Yeah.
With just changes with the state and how to do things, and, being more customer service oriented. And our team is great.
Yeah.
They really
really
are good
are.
with people. Yeah.
They're very, like I said, they're very polite. And they're very, they've been very helpful, and
And that's what it's about.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah,
Because nobody
customer
goes
service.
in there. Yeah, exactly. Nobody goes into the DMV knowing everything about what they need and what they have to have and how to register and how to get a license. And that's what we're there for, to help them.
and I guess the other thing is too is that utilizing our DMV
Yes.
here,
Yes.
not only because of the 12% that goes and stays into our backyard, but also the people, and chances are you're going to know somebody I know that we know or they know.
We get a lot of people that know everybody.
The word spreads,
Yep.
and hopefully that's really changed things for you people dealing with the customers that come into your.
We
your
actually
building.
have people that come in and say, my aunt was just in here. She said this DMV is a great DMV, therefore I'm here.
Yeah.
We have people that come from other states that say, oh gosh, if you were somewhere, if you were in my home state, that DMV was just awful. It's crowded, and there are crowded DMVs
Right.
in New York State as well.
Yeah, sure.
New York City, I mean, they're very, very crowded, but it's all in which how you handle each customer. You
Yeah.
take one at a time, you handle their situation, you help them, and therefore hope that when they leave, they're happy and they come back. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The book that you have here, Driver's
Yes.
Manual,
Yes,
is
yes.
very thin.
Little
I mean,
words.
It's not thick. Little words. That doesn't take up much pages. But,
Yes.
and that's available at no charge at the DMV.
Absolutely. Give
You
them
know,
out to everyone.
And it's, again, you're not going to pick it up and start reading it on an airplane or while you're in a waiting room.
Well, you might. They have some really great information.
But to go through there and just refresh,
Yes.
and bring yourself up to date on the laws and the changes that have taken place in
Absolutely.
comparison again to that. Well, the last time I took it was I was 16 years old.
True. I mean, if somebody were to pick this up, there's, refreshers on signs. Some signs we don't even see at times. And, points and, there's a lot of information on defensive driving, how to pass correctly, how to follow the stop signs and the lights, and basically just being a safer driver.
There's one thing that was on the
Very
back
interesting.
here I just
Yeah.
saw. Right here, a yield sign.
Yes.
How many people don't know what a yield sign is? And you'll see them come down, especially like Lake Avenue going into
True.
the circle. They'll stop. Nobody in the circle, nobody going around it. And I said, what are you stopping for? I mean, it's like stopping for a green light. And it says yield the right of way. If somebody is in the circle, then you have to
Sometimes
stop.
that's their yield. They
But-
want to look
And
before
people
they
don't
go.
know what yield is.
True.
They think it's a stop sign. So, all the new insignias, and not necessarily new, but they've been updated. What I used to call international signs, a lot of them are international signs. But what do they mean? I mean, just in the back, I just seen this while you're holding
Yeah.
it up. I says, just taking a look at that and refreshing your mind. What are these new? What
Very
are these
true.
new signs? What do they? What do they mean?
Anything to be safer on the roads. That
Anything
is
to
a
be
newer.
safe. Yeah,
That is a newer book as well, and we have one for motorcycles. We have the motorcycle book,
yeah, yeah,
and of course for commercial drivers, we
Yeah.
have the commercial driving
yeah,
manual as well for people to
yeah.
use, specifically if they're getting a commercial driver's license, but also to refresh. There's
Yeah.
no reason why having a commercial driver's license,
Yeah.
such as like a regular license, you can't pick up the book and refresh yourself with some information. So
Well, as
they're
I-
available, no charge.
As I brought
No
up,
charge.
with Sue, I said when I started with first student going through the training, the DOT exam.
Yes.
I mean, first student has their own, but going through the DOT, and I mean for the school bus was just. I mean, they have I think a 98% failure on the first test,
Wow.
first and second test. I mean, it's unbelievable. You got to be a mechanical driver. You got to know the mechanicals of
hard.
the bus and everything, engine
Yeah.
and whatever. But once you get through it, it's one of them experiences.
Yes.
That once you get through it and you look back and go, all right, and we all have to check our buses every time we go out. There's a pre-check, and you go around. There's different zones.
Wow.
So things that you weren't aware of when you went into it. When I started into it, and I had a CDL.
Yeah. See, so you
So
do. You pick up
You
information
pick up
that
and
you didn't have.
and I did it because I want to keep doing things. I want to keep
Yes.
busy and active. And as I said before, I've been traveling for 50 years. So now I want to do something. I'm not going to be working at Walmart, and I'm not down on that Walmart, but that's not me. I'm a retail store.
I'm actually glad that you took that test, though. Even though I know you failed it a couple times.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you took that test, and you're able to say that you learned so much from taking that test.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you haven't taken a test for years since the first time that you received your license.
I'll tell you what, the test online that I took was really, as frustrating as it was.
Is it a little bit intimidating, or?
Yeah. It was intimidating because I know it. I know how to drive a car. I know how to drive
Well,
a
of
vehicle.
course we all do.
But I says,
We think we do.
and then of course the real answer is, well, if you know that and you're so good at it,
Exactly.
why are you online taking this test?
And why did you fail? No.
Yeah. But and
Poor
there was
Bob.
a couple of questions were trick questions.
Of course they were.
But it's just simple stuff. When we come up through, you never pass on the right.
Mm-hmm,
Period. It's a blind spot. You
True.
don't pass on the right.
True.
and if you do, and the car pulls in, you get in an accident, you're probably going to be at fault.
Exactly.
Many different situations, but like on the thruway, it's still against the law to pass on the right, and people don't understand that. Another question was, when is it okay to go over the speed limit? And they give you multiple choice. When you're passing another car that's going 5 miles slower, and you want to get around them, and the dotted line and everything, which is another thing. People don't know the dotted lines.
They don't know the solid and the dots.
And and I said when you're passing a vehicle, like on the thruway, you're overtaking the vehicle, get past the vehicle, come back in. That's the way we were taught.
Yes.
You know what the answer was? Never. You never go over the speed limit.
I was listening
Never.
to you talk, and I said, no, you're really not supposed to do
Never.
that. You just have to stay the speed limit and pass the
But we
person
were taught
at that
to
speed.
pass the car, don't go the same speed, go around it, get past them, and pull back in.
Yeah.
And they said, no, you never go over the speed limit.
Nope.
So, I mean, it was little things like that going, oh, come on,
And
this
you
is only
wouldn't,
common
right?
sense.
We get into the habit of
Yeah.
doing our own thing when we
Right.
drive. So
Right.
it's always good to have that refresher. And there are ways in which to get that information.
Yeah. Well, a friend of mine, wife, got a ticket on a Wasco Road. Somebody was turning on to White Bridge
Okay.
Road and had the left signal on, so she went around. Trooper pulled her over and gave her a ticket for going over the white solid line on the right side.
Yeah, you have to wait. for
And
the
she says,
person.
no, she says, I was going around the car. Because, again, we were taught, go around, keep traffic
If they were
moving.
passing, yeah, they were turning.
And Trooper says, no.
No.
And she was dumbfounded. She got a ticket for going over on the right passing, on a car that was turning left.
Yeah. Well, there's shortcuts with everything.
Yeah.
There's every task you do, such as take your job for an example. You basically find shortcuts.
Yeah.
Same thing for driving.
Yeah.
People find shortcuts.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily the right shortcuts, but we find them. So
Yeah.
those refreshers, like you said,
Yeah.
really put in perspective of what you really should be doing or shouldn't be doing.
But somewhere down the road, I would like to see it, and I'll get people who criticize me for saying it. But when you're 60, 62, they should be forced, the incentive.
Right.
They're not going to go in and pick up the book and start reading it. But they should be forced into
To a refresher.
an incentive program, say within the next year, you have to take a refresher course. And online, here's the online.
And it can reduce your insurance as
and
well.
it's free, and it can reduce your insurance,
Yeah.
but to go through it because it is very well done.
You learn a lot.
And you do pick up, when you go back, and there's things that surprise you, and they grab your eye,
Yeah, they do.
So
I also wanted to add, we talked about the DMV and the forms that, the reports that can be submitted to Albany for a concerned driver. And I touched base about how a physician could fill out a driver review form. And I touched base a little bit on if there's an accident or a police officer is involved in an incident with someone that is a concerned driver, they can fill out their form and submit it to Albany. You also can have yourself fill out a form for a concerned driver, such as a neighbor. It doesn't necessarily have to be a parent, but it could be a neighbor.
really,
And there is a form that if they contact the DMV, we can direct them to what that form is and how to fill it out and where to mail it. And it basically reports the incident about the driver and what had happened. And the result of that is a letter to that person in the mail by New York State Department of Motor Vehicles. The same thing as from a doctor or a police officer of some testings that they may have to have just to review their driving
I wasn't aware of that
capabilities.
either.
So there is a form that can be filled out, and it's very helpful. It's very helpful because you necessarily going to your father saying, well, I think you shouldn't drive anymore. He's not going to take that as well.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Right. So you could use the doctor to fill out the form if there's a concern medically or medication-wise.
Right.
But you yourself can submit it and have the state send the letter, and it still takes you out of the situation, which is very helpful because then it takes so that the burden of letting your parent or your friend or neighbor know that, hey, we're concerned of your safety, but we're concerned of our safety. And it doesn't allow them to get mad at you and make them feel like
Right.
you're kind of battling with them over it or ganging up on them. You're basically, it's a concern, and that's exactly what it is. The forms are used as a concern, and then it allows the state just to intervene. And it can be, like I said, a course. It could be a hearing test, a vision test, a road test,
Yeah.
but something just to allow the driver an opportunity to, one, get better and stay on the road, or come to terms with, hey, it might be time for me not to drive anymore.
Look at the signs
So.
you see in the yards. Look twice.
Yeah.
Save a life.
You need to.
And I'll tell you, there's times you look and don't see.
Very true.
You know, when you're
Very
pulling
true.
out, then all of a sudden you look back and go, well, where'd that car come from?
Exactly.
You know, or that motorcycle, where'd that come from? You know, so
And sometimes you don't pay attention to that stuff specifically if you're not being tested.
Right.
If you're not going through a road test or
Right.
you're not taking a written test, you
Right.
don't really sometimes pay attention to all
Right.
that. So
is there anything else we didn't address or I didn't cover or ask questions on? Or
I don't think so, Bob. I just thank you for having us and talking about the DMV and the older driver and the services that we can provide. And just remember, everybody, use your local DMV.
just any questions at all,
Give us a call.
just walk in the door and ask the question, and DMV will help you out.
Absolutely.
That's an invaluable service to our community, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh,
Thank you very,
you.
very much.
Thanks for
I
having
appreciate
me.
it very
Thank
much.
you.
And listen, again, we're here. This is all free to do your own show, any topic, and we'll show you how to run all the equipment. More importantly, having guests like Shereen to be here to educate us on all the availability of solving problems and issues is right here, DMV. They can give you the direction.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
And great job to you and your team.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you. They're great. Thank you.
And we'll see you later. Thank you.